A little. Oh, hey, girl. It didn't add you as the panelist. Hold on.
There you go.
Oh my God, did you see me taking a selfie of myself? That's hilarious. I was like, a little something for Instagram.
How are you going? And I'm
keeps doing that. It's like not adding you guys as the panelist. So then I don't even realize you're on.
That's funny.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm sorry. I'm actually doing this from the car though, Nicole. I'm so sorry, but I had scheduling issues with the kids. I'm like, oh my God.
Whatever you need to do, right?
Awesome.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm really looking forward to this. And I think they are too as well.
Great. I saw a couple of posts. It's just been so crazy, but I did see you posting and there was some interesting comments. I think people are interested in, it seems like, I think you did a poll and there's quite a few introverts in your group.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of introverts in online businesses. You know what I mean? So I don't, or like maybe I just get a lot because of my audience, because I'm an introvert. I don't know, but I definitely feel like it's a thing, you know?
Yeah. And I guess, I mean, 50% of people are introverts, you know, so odds are.
Exactly. That makes sense too. I feel like I know less people who say they're extroverts too. I think this is the thing though, which like, I think people just say they're introverts. I don't think they really know, but I feel like it's become this thing to be like, introverts can't talk on the phone. Introverts can't do this. Like, so I feel like people are like, oh, I'm going to like glom onto that to get out of like all social interaction.
Absolutely. I talk about that all the time, you know, it's like you can't use it as an excuse to hide behind, right?
Like that's the one thing that drives me a little crazy because it's like, yeah, okay. Like that's shyness or that's like a confidence issue.
Exactly. 100%. Exactly. So how's it all been going though? It's been pretty full on. You've had so much work to do with this. It's been crazy, right?
I mean, yeah, it's like intense. Like this is funny because I was thinking about it. I was like, this is the thing that the event that we actually talked about in your summit.
Exactly, right? Exactly.
Yeah. So it kind of works out good, but you know, it's intense, but I really like it. I feel like it works well with my introvert issues, which is that like too much I'm actually like too much one-on-one time, like too much, like I feel like I could almost hide better in like a group.
Right.
You know, it's not as much like my energy can then serve multiple people rather than that intense, like one-to-one energy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's really fun. And, you know, I'm very lucky this year because it's the second year. So some things are easier, obviously. And, you know, my team is super helpful. You know, I have a project manager. And so last year I had to do like a lot of the small detail stuff, which is where I get very tired. So creating the Zoom links and the schedules and just stuff like that, that is like, I make easy mistakes on it because it's boring to me, you know? Absolutely. So it's nice to have someone on my team who's doing all that. So I feel like I can just kind of be doing the stuff that's fun for me.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. And I guess the tech, and that was interesting too, because I saw Facebook was down for you too, right? For one of the days.
Yeah, there was one day.
I was like, oh my God.
Oh God, I know. And it was like the week of like the 4th of July here too. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of already, but luckily I only had the one training that Wednesday. I mean, the group was still pretty active considering it was a holiday week. And it was supposed to like wrap up next week. So I'll probably like just leave everything for another week in the group so people could like check it out and keep watching them. I mean, it's crazy to me. So many people are like watching the replay still and like catching up on stuff, you know? So
It's incredible, Nicole. Honestly, like even with my summit stuff, people are still, I mean, that was like 3 or 4 months ago now, and
mhm.
people are still going back. And I can check it and I can see the engagement
Right.
inside the videos and stuff, and people are still accessing that and going through the videos. I mean, there's just a ton of content, and no one, who's got time to watch it
I
all. So
know.
I think it's, yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So do you have any other questions or anything?
No, I don't think so. I think you're gonna follow my questions because I kind
Yeah,
of have
it's
prepped.
pretty conversational. I'm sure people will be
Okay,
on asking questions too. I'll follow your questions, and I'm sure we'll dive deeper into like some areas of it.
awesome.
I'm just gonna grab the water, so with my luck, I'll have a choking attack or something.
Okay, no problem.
All right. So I think we're good. I'm excited because it's showing. It's gonna share. I hope.
Okay, beautiful.
It can be a
Um,
little bit problematic with Zoom. So I will, I'm gonna share it into the group, and then I'll let you know when we're in there, and then I'm gonna like read your bio and introduce you.
okay,
Let me just pull up the group so I can see when we go live in there.
beautiful.
All right. Hey everyone, it's Nicole, and we are going to be getting started diving into how to get visibility as an introvert. And I'm super excited because we have Casey Lightbody here with us today. And actually, the way I met her was that she did a huge summit, which was amazing, all about how to sell as an introvert a few months ago. And I was lucky enough to be a guest on that summit. And I loved how she really targeted sales for introverts and just marketing for introverts because, we're going to talk about this, but I think there's a lot of myths out there for all you guys who identify as introverts that prevent us from selling, prevent us from getting seen, that allow us to kind of self-sabotage our visibility, to be honest. So I'm really excited that she's here as an expert, and we're going to be diving deep into this. And just to introduce you guys, Casey Lightbody is the CEO and founder of The Quiet Collective. She's a business and marketing strategist who helps introverted, quiet, sensitive women entrepreneurs come out of hiding to build, grow, and scale their businesses. She's the host of the annual virtual conference that I just mentioned. And she's also been featured on Entrepreneur on Fire, The Introverted Entrepreneur, and League of Extraordinary Introverts. I'll have to check some of those out. Casey draws from her university education, 15 plus years of work experience, and life experience living on 3 different continents, deep intuition, and over 80 plus interviews with industry influencers to help her clients with personalized one-to-one strategy and coaching to create successful, sustainable businesses on their terms. She helps introverted women in the startup and early growth stages of their business inside the Quiet Collective membership site. And when she's not enjoying those precious moments with her husband and 3 boys, you can find her sipping on an Earl Grey, curled up with a good novel, or sneaking in a nap on the weekends. I actually took like Sunday, I took 2 naps, which is so cool. And I was just like, I just have to close my eyes. I can't do it. I'm like the worst snapper, but I just think like the energy of like showing up for summer camp and everything like that.
You need it.
Like, I am ready to sleep. So those of you who are on, say hello. If you are, an introvert, let us know if you identify as an introvert. And also tell us where you struggle the most showing up in your marketing, or where you feel being an introvert might have held you back from growing your business more quickly, because I know that can definitely happen. So Casey, tell us, for those of us who are introverts, I'm so excited you're here. And by the way, Casey's tuning in. It's morning by you, right? What time is it by
Right. It is. It's like 9 o'clock in the morning. So
9 o'clock in the morning
and
in
yeah.
Australia. So that's exciting. It's 7 p.m. here, so by me anyways. So thank you so much for coming on so early with us. But tell us a little bit, as introverts, do we really need to be visible in our businesses?
Thanks, Nicole, and thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be talking about this topic, I think, because, it's something that I think us introverts struggle with, or, it's something, as you say, we self-sabotage ourselves with. And so I really want to talk about what this term of visibility means first, because I think it's really important to define that. And you hear about visibility online all the time, right? And it's like, well, what does that mean? And so for me, visibility is all around brand awareness, right? It's all about how to show up, how to be seen, be heard, and be known for something specific. So that's kind of in a nutshell what visibility is. So, so many times I talk to clients and they're like, oh, I'm really scared about putting my, going live on my website or getting my website up and running. But and the reality is that, it's all well and good having your website up, but people have to know about you. They've got to understand who you are, what you stand for, and what you and how you can actually serve them, how you can actually help them. So yes, so I think it's really important to be visible in our businesses, and know that visibility is kind of this one-way communication. So it's kind of them getting to know, like, and trust you, because ultimately that's all, when we loop back around, okay, this is a piece of marketing that we're talking about, is visibility and brand awareness, but it's all about building that know, like, and trust factor with your audience, right? So that they get to the stage where they trust you enough to buy your products or services. So it is really, really important. And it's important to do consistently because of that recognition. It's you need to be consistent in it. So I think we'll talk about that later, because I think that's a struggle that us introverts do have. It's that consistency piece. But yeah, I think it's really important to be visible in our businesses. It also creates an opportunity for feedback. So talking about that kind of one-way communication. So you're showing up, you're speaking about what you stand for, you're talking about, who you serve best, and it creates this opportunity for feedback so that you can actually then tweak and pivot as necessary. So that's another really important reason why we show up and why we're visible in our businesses. But I want to also prefix that, Nicole, by saying, you don't have to be center stage either. I think that's something that us introverts also struggle with. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to be visible, and it's all about being in the spotlight, and it's look at me. And that's not it either, right? It can be like, say you are a consultant with really high level products, and you only need a handful of people. That doesn't mean that you need to show up for the masses, right? It means being visible to a handful of people, your ideal clients, and that might mean that it's one-on-one outreach, personal outreach. It doesn't mean having to do 10 Facebook Lives a day or something like that, So I think that's also really an important piece to kind of be aware of, is that it's not necessarily, depending on your business model or the stage of business that you're in, about being real front and center in the spotlight visibility,
Right.
Yeah. So
I think there are different levels almost of visibility, right? Like there is that smaller scale, deeper visibility with a few people that you have that stronger relationship with, that stronger referral relationship with, which could be like one level of visibility. And then there is that, bigger visibility where maybe you have a mailing list, like you get on podcasts, you get on, or you write guest blogs or something like that, and you are bringing a bigger audience. And then there is that, obviously, like video and stage and speaking and things like that. So I do feel like there's almost like different levels to visibility, and we don't have to be want all of them.
Absolutely. It's really important. And I'm not sure if we'll get into this a bit later, Nicole, but again, it's also, and I share about that in my guide actually, is I talk about these different levels, so it's all about, for me, it's all about, I use this term that Beth Beeler, a really good friend of mine from the Introvert Entrepreneur, talks about, and she says, expanding your capacity zone rather than taking these giant leaps out of your comfort zone, So for me, it's all about stretching that elastic band, right? It's like actually, stretching it so that it's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's not so uncomfortable that it's going to stop you in your tracks, So and I share this all the time, is that I had this absolute phobia of public speaking. You know, this was a story that I told myself. It's like, I can't speak. I absolutely hate public speaking, can't get up in front of an audience. And I remember the first time I held a workshop, you know, and there were 2 people at the workshop. And I was like, oh my God, this is so scary, you know. And and then gradually those workshops got bigger and bigger, and it moved to 10 people, and then 15 people, and then 20 people. And then eventually I got used to that. And I mean, look, I still don't love getting up on stage, but it got to the stage where I was in Santiago in Chile. I was at a national conference and speaking in front of an audience of 300 people, you know. But if I look back at that time and said, oh, I'm going to speak in front of 300 people, I'm like, you know, if you could have told me that 5 years ago, that I was like, there's no way that I'm going to do that, you know. But it's actually stretching that capacity, my elastic band, and getting more and more comfortable with being on stage, that actually allowed me to show up and be visible in front of more people like that.
Yeah. And actually, Terry said on here, she's an introverted extrovert, and she doesn't like doing videos, and she's not that great at reaching out. So, you know, Terry, I'd be curious which ways of visibility have worked for you so far. What have you enjoyed so far? And, you know, I love it because, you know, that's the thing. You just have to find 1 or 2 things that are comfortable for you. You don't have to do all of them. And I think too, I don't know about you, like you're just saying, like, I think it changes over time. You know, what I used to be comfortable doing, like, you know, there's new things I actually enjoy more. Like, I actually do enjoy, I used to go to like more networking events and more in-person things. And now I actually prefer like things like this, right? Like where, I mean, I'm super visible for a longer period of time. And to me, like, I'd rather prep for that and like rest up for that and show up just really consistently for a good cycle. And then, you know, after this, you'll never see me again. Just kidding. I'll be behind the scenes working with my clients and doing that kind of thing. And for me, it's just better. I have that like personality where I'm either all in or I'm all out. It's very hard for me to be like, you know, medium all the time. And I felt for a while that there was something wrong with me because of that, you know, but really it is, I think, just about allowing yourself to embrace whatever feels good and making it work for you consistently. For you, Casey, what feels good for you right now in terms of being visible? How do you show up visible and, you know, do your sales and growth with people?
Yeah, so that's so interesting that you said that, Nicole, about yourself, because that for me is that piece too. So for me, it's something that actually having a consistent, that medium of actually showing up consistently over time is something I really, really struggle with, and something that I'm trying to get better at. But I love that. And that's why I host those annual summits, because I absolutely adore interviewing people. So this is an interesting thing too, around, you know, talking about with Terry, you know, that she's not great at video and she's not great at maybe that one-on-one outreach. It's actually fun leaning into your strengths. Like, I think this is a really important thing, is actually being able to lean into your strengths and find that place that that you find relatively comfortable. Look, it might, and again, it might feel discomfortable. Is that the word? Uncomfortable. You may feel some discomfort. You may feel some discomfort to start off with, but it may get easier over time. So you may be a great writer, say, okay, or you may be a fantastic storyteller, or you may love getting out in front of a video and being really raw and real on Facebook Lives. It's all about finding that sweet spot, Nicole. And so for me, what I found was I always thought I had this story that introverts were supposed to be really good at writing, you know. And for me, I actually struggle with writing. Like, it doesn't come easily or naturally to me. It takes some time. And so when I started my podcast, I realized how much I love interviewing people. Like, I absolutely love interviewing people. I love finding out about other people. I love shining the light on other people. I love bringing other people's perspectives to my audience. And so for me, once I realized that, it then became so much easier for me to realize how I could show up. So that's why I run those summits. So I do those summits, and those are a really big event over a period of time that I can show up consistently for my audience. So that's probably my key area. And then I actually do a lot of outreach individually. Like, I like that one-on-one outreach, Nicole. So I do a lot of behind the scenes. It's not that visibility on social media, for example, but it's a lot of using social media to actually reach out individually. So
right.
those are kind of a couple of strategies that I use.
Now, Terry said, so she has done trainings in front of big groups of people, 10 to 200. She was nervous, but she knew what she was there to do. Whereas now creating a video to tell her story on business Facebook or Instagram seems daunting. And I think, Terry, for that too, take the aspects that worked in the bigger place. Like, it sounds like you knew your content, you probably knew you were teaching something, and you can just start with that on Facebook or Instagram. You don't have to tell your story on Facebook or Instagram. I think, like, start with what feels good to you, which is teaching. And I would say that's probably what I started with too. I'm not, and I think some of us too, depending on our backgrounds or training, as someone who, got my master's in social work and then worked as a therapist, like, my training was very like research paper oriented, writing progress notes, very school-based oriented. So at first, I think I was more comfortable like explaining a concept, more than like bringing my own personal experience into something. And I still have to get better at the storytelling piece, I would say. So I think that, you don't have to start out with telling your story. You can start out with just kind of teaching information that's helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Jessica said, and I'd be curious about this, like, she's struggled to go with networking events. What are your thoughts on networking events as an introvert?
Oh my gosh, this is a hilarious topic for me because that's how I started. So I thought that that's what you did, right? You had to go to networking events. And so I started, and I remember really clearly going to this one networking event, and I walked in and it was speed networking. And oh my gosh, that was my absolute worst nightmare. I could just, this noise, like, again, I'm really highly sensitive. So the noise inside the room just drove me crazy. And it just felt really pushy and just like this kind of 1 or 2 minutes of really all about talking about yourself. And it really wasn't fantastic. It wasn't a fantastic first experience. And so that really put me off networking for quite a while, I've got to say. But I think finding a networking group where you're like, I think it's really important to find the right networking group. So I think don't be afraid to actually test things out. Again, like, I realized that kind of networking event was not for me, right? And so I actually ended up setting up my own local networking event. So I run a local meetup, a local networking event, which is really introvert friendly. I call it an unnetworking event, actually. So it allows, but like, it's just really introvert friendly, where it's cozy, it's small, it's intimate, and people feel really safe in that environment. And I couldn't really find that locally for myself. That was just those really big networking events, and so that's so I started one myself, and that's kind of
I like that. And I also like, thinking outside of the box a little bit with it. Like, I don't like and networking events per se, where you're like going and it's like a chamber of commerce meeting and it's like all these businesses and people walk around and just hand their business cards to you. Like, I hate, and then you end up on everybody's email list the next day without permission. Like,
exactly.
I hate those ones. But I think more of like social events as networking events. So I like ones that maybe it's like a book signing where there'll be other business owners or, potential clients, or maybe it's like a talk where there's like, there's, time afterwards. Or I even like conferences. Like, I like those, where they do have the time where you're sitting. So you don't, like, for me, I feel like that works well because it's not that like couple of straight hours of small talk, but it's like, oh, a training. You could say hey to the people you're sitting with and like introduce yourself. And then you have some mingle time and then you're back. So to me, like, I think that does well for me. Like, that does better for me because it's not that like straight on, like, other ways, honestly, you will find me like taking some breaks in the bathroom, stepping outside to check my phone or something like that, because it just is too much for me. So I think too, just like being willing to try different events and like seeing, different setups for things and kind of thinking outside of the typical networking event.
You raise a really good point there, Nicole. Actually, one of my clients, we were talking about that too, and she actually lives up in Townsville, and which is quite a small town up north, in central Queensland. And she was talking about how she struggles to find networking events locally there, you know. And we were talking about this, and she actually joined a meditation group, and that has become her networking, and that has become her networking opportunity. It's filled with a group of her ideal clients or people that know people that she wants to be introduced to, and so she's found that has really worked for her. So it's not that traditional kind of networking event that you go to, but it's actually just something that's really fun for her, that has evolved into a networking opportunity for her. So I think that's you raised a really good point there. And also, I want, in terms of actually conferences, I agree actually with you around that too. I think actually having that longer period of time, so that there's not that intense pressure to actually, you know, speak to as many people as you can. But again, I like to take the pressure off myself and say, look, if I make 1, 2, or 3 really great connections, it doesn't mean that I've got to like try and meet as many people as I can or work the room or something like that, but just really focusing on, again, going really narrow and deep with people. And I, as an introvert, really like that. So taking the pressure off myself and saying, look, if I just make 1 or 2 connections, that's fantastic. And in fact, just recently I had my accountant's end of financial year party he was putting on. He's been 10 years in business, and I went along, and I always have a wing woman or man with me too. As an introvert, I find that really easy. That's really nice, so that if you are stuck, you've got someone to always go back to as your safety net, you know. So I actually had my hubby with me last week, a couple of weeks ago, at this event, and we didn't know anyone. But I really just, again, focused on 1 or 2 conversations. And I ended up having the best time ever, because I really just had these really amazing conversations just with a couple of people, you know.
Yeah, you know, I think that's a good point too. So for anyone who's on all the introverts, have you ever tried bringing someone with you or going with someone to something where you already know them? That can make it a little bit easier. It could also make it a little bit trickier, because you have to be careful not to just only talk to that person. And like, you know, I was just thinking about what you said, and I know that, you know, me and my clients have talked about that. One of my clients is actually going to like a bloggers conference networking event this weekend. And, you know, I think she said like about 25 people will be there. So we were talking about her finding 5 people that she wants to follow up with and have like a following, like coffee connection with, or something like that. So I think sometimes too, like, choosing numbers and making it measurable can ease some of the anxiety of it, and also prevent you from getting caught up in that like one conversation.
100%. I totally agree with that. Actually, and that's why I love setting those goals too, like actually having some numbers to actually measure with. I think, again, as my analytical brain, as an introvert, I like that too. You know, so.
Otherwise, you can be that person who goes like, I've been that person. And sometimes, listen, you guys, sometimes too, like, once again, it's getting comfortable. I'm not going to lie. I have been that person that goes to a networking event and really stands in the corner and talks to no one. And sometimes I just had to like have that experience, show up, be uncomfortable, survive it, and go again the next time, you know. And it can be awkward, but I have been that person. So, you know, if you have to just kind of get it out of the way, or if you just tell yourself, I just have to go in for 10 minutes, I can always leave. I think that's the other thing. I think we put such like this make this big permanent deal of it, you know what I mean? I think just like kind of being like, okay, so what? So I go, if I hate it, I can leave. Like no one's going to like really notice or point it out to you or anything like that. So Jessica said she did bring someone, and they ended up spending most of the time talking to each other, but it is easier to talk to other people as well. And I think that's the thing. And you know what? If that happens the first time, so what? At least you guys got there. You could like get the lay of the land, you know what I mean? And then the next time, maybe it'll be easier to like branch out a little bit more. And Terry says at conferences, she always connects with someone she knows if possible. So, and I think that's the other nice piece about conferences, which I'm guessing is why you like them so much, is that you can really become like friends with somebody. You're there, you're in a tight group of people, especially if it's something where it's a few days, you're staying at a hotel, you start seeing the same people over and over. Like once again, for me, I am that like in that kind of setting, like I'm that gradual person. I don't always present the best on the first one. I'm like nervous, and I can present a little bit like cold or unfriendly. Sorry guys, it's true. So sometimes it does take like seeing people a couple of times, and like for me to warm up and then to make friends with people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm the same, it takes a little, again, I think it's that introversion is that we tend to be quite private too, Nicole, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And actually going back to that point about sharing stories online, I think it takes time. And so don't put so much pressure on yourself that you've got to be this kind of gregarious, outgoing person off the bat, because if you're an introvert like me, it does take time, it takes time to kind of warm up, and especially with people that I don't know. Like I'm great with people that I know, but with people that I don't know, it does take time to kind of warm up. And yeah.
So do you have any tips? Like we've talked about a few different ways to be visible and get out there. How do you choose which one? How do you choose where to be visible?
Gosh, now there are so many different strategies. Obviously, Nicole, like there is just like online, offline. It's like, how do you actually choose which ones to do, right? So I think for me, my advice would be finding that sweet spot between what your strengths and skills are and where your ideal client is, so again, it can be my advice to my clients is always pick one strategy and try it for 90 days. So pick one strategy and be consistent with it. So as much as you possibly can. Again, it can start at gradual stages. You can. I love this analogy when I was trying to get fit. Not that I've done it anymore, but I have this app called Couch to 5Ks.
Right. I did
that. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
I don't do it anymore, but I've got to get back into it. But I love that analogy because it's like almost like it's actually start with those baby steps and start testing the water and seeing what works and gradually build up to your 5Ks, and so that would be my advice, is really finding that sweet spot between what you feel comfortable doing, or at least a little bit comfortable. It might, like I said at the beginning, it might feel a little bit uncomfortable to start off with, but start there and then gradually build up, but track and measure too. So when you are using a visibility strategy, is it actually allowing you to achieve your business goal? So it's ultimately coming back to finding a strategy that's working, and ultimately, why are you doing this? What's the purpose of this visibility strategy? So don't do it just for the sake of doing it because everyone else is doing it, but finding a way that works for you. And I'm all about that too. It's like, that's why I talk about finding success on your terms. It's all about actually testing and measuring and finding a way that works for you, and not just doing it because it's the next shiny object and everyone else is doing it, right?
And I really think too, in terms of what you're saying, it's like noticing your own patterns, right? Like, how do you react to things? How do you deal with something new? How do you, deal with change? And are you a person who tries something out and like goes all in, right? Or are you a person who needs to adjust? And I know for me, like what motivates you? And I know for me, like I'm one of those people who, I'm not gonna go run a 5K overnight, like, or start a new intense exercise routine overnight. Like that's gonna set myself up for failure.
Right.
Whereas, one of my family members, that's their style. They'll make a decision and the next day they're like gung-ho 100%. And, I know now, like I can't push myself to go that hard because I will give up and I'll miss out on good opportunities because I've put myself in a position for it to fail. So I think it's also just kind of like knowing your style and knowing your, what works for you. So poor Tamara, she said she's terrible at networking, in quotes. She said all the events that she's been forced to go to have always been more traumatic than helpful. So Tamara, let us know what kind of events you've tried and Tamara's an artist. So tell us like which kind of events you've tried that have been traumatic and what felt traumatic about it. Because I think too, we want to make sure it's not traumatic and not just like uncomfortable and could get better with time, but
Yeah, true. And Nicole, I'd also add, I think it's also important to get known for one big idea, like we always talk about the riches are in the niches, right? And so I think, again, from a visibility perspective, getting really clear on what's that one big sellable idea that you can be known for, because that makes you showing up much easier, right? So when you know that what you're standing for, you can start to speak about that specific topic, you know. And I know that's really hard for humans. Like, I've got multiple interests, and but I think, again, as introverts, we naturally we think really deeply, and we tend to be over analytical. And so when we are trying to be in multiple places and being pulled in multiple directions, I think it's something that we really struggle with. I think so. Actually finding that single focus and getting really narrow, and then going deep in that, allows us to show up more consistently and be more visible more easily. So I think that's another point to add around that.
Yes, I think so too, because I think that, as annoying as it is to like have that elevator speech that they call it, I think that when you can succinctly like put out what you do, you can feel more confident, and you're not scrambling for what to say. And actually I would love to know, do you recommend having like conversation touch points ready? Like, do you recommend having some things ready to talk about, like for more of the networking piece and in-person piece as an introvert?
Absolutely. And again, I think as introverts, we tend to be better being prepared. So I think that's what you mentioned at the top of, I don't know if we were on or offline when we were talking about this, but for you, with your boot camp that you've got, you're able to prepare, right? So actually being able to, so I think any kind of event, and again, for this, like, I had some questions ready so that I'm prepared. Like, I've had the chance to think about what I want to talk about and what I want to share. And I think that allows us to be more confident in terms of showing up more visibly too. So yes, definitely, I think having some communication touch points ready for any event, whether it's online or offline, is really important for introverts.
Yeah. And actually, Terry, this might be helpful with you with the live thing. One thing that I've started doing to get better at the storytelling piece is, I think, like, what happened to me over the past 48 hours, like, what happened to me? Like, did I go to a business and have an experience there? Like, did something happen in my home? Like, how can I connect that to, like, what is there a story that I can go into? That's not like my big story, but like just like a little, incident in life that I can then connect to my audience, or, connect to business, or whatever topic that you talk about the most for your clients. So I feel like, what you're saying is really true and so important. You guys, I feel like this could be one of the best takeaways, is really being clear on your audience and what you do, and just being able to word it confidently. And I think even that is going to get easier with time. The more you go, the more it will happen. But that's going to allow you to connect with people too.
Absolutely.
For more long term.
Yeah. I agree, Nicole. And I guess the other thing that I want to share, and I think this is something that is probably surprising for introverts, but something that I've really found, as I only identified as an introvert in my late 30s, early 40s, like I thought I was this, I realized I was this kind of fake extrovert, and actually, to that point, really, the definition of an introvert is all around the energy, right? It's how we recharge. And we were talking about this offline too, is that it's all, so many times I hear clients saying I'm an introvert, but it's more of a confidence issue. And they're using the term of introversion to hide behind. And I think that's really important to notice and actually be aware of, is that, are you a true introvert? And where do you gather your energy? Where do you go to recharge? And is it alone, or in smaller groups, or is it with people and being really social, But sorry, going back to my point, is that once I realized that I was an introvert, I realized how great I was at connection. So I think for introverts, we really are master connectors. And I think that we're really great at forming these one-on-one relationships and really excelling at those kind of interpersonal relationships. And so for me, when I've leaned into those natural tendencies, I've been able to really succeed. And that goes back to the fact that I've been able to host these conferences, these online summits, and have people like Amy Porterfield and Carrie Green and Jada Selner and Selena Sue and all these really big names be guests on my summit, is that I was able to connect with them
Right.
really easily and lean into that strength of mind of being able to connect with people. And so I think another way of actually showing up and being visible if you're an introvert is showing up through other people. So
Mm-hmm.
just like, we're doing here, is being able to show up through other people, because I think that having that connection to other people's audiences makes visibility so much easier too. So it can go two ways. You can have the kind of that one-on-one relationship. So again, instead of working to make sure that 1,000 people know you, work on those key relationships, maybe those 10 people who know 10 more people that they can connect you with, and really focusing on those relationships is really big. But then also leveraging those other people's platforms, so actually being able to contribute to their platform. So maybe it's a podcast that you can be a guest on, or you can, there's a high traffic blog that you can contribute to, and those kind of things. And I think as introverts, we are really good at making those relationships. So leveraging that as a visibility strategy is something I recommend for all my introverted clients too.
Yeah, I like that, because I think that gives you, I always tell my clients too, because in the beginning, it is about putting yourself out there individually, right? And, sometimes that's harder for people. Sometimes it almost seems easier to just like do a Facebook Live, and I think in the beginning it'll bring you like 1 million clients because you could reach more people. Or like, I know for me, when I started, I was like, I just have to get my website up, and then everybody will find it, and I won't have to talk to Nicole, and I'll just have this like, buy this package right off my site, and nobody's going to actually have to talk to me until I work with people. That's enough, by the way, guys. It still doesn't work. So I think, when I'm working with my clients, and I'm sure you have this too, just working, with clients with similar things about growing their business, it does start out with like, you have to put yourself out there with people individually. You have to reach out. And I always say, listen, if you do like 100 reach outs, you're going to get 10 good relationships, and that's good. You don't have to have 100 good relationships, and not everybody's you're not going to like everybody or want to have that deeper relationship with them, but you have to kind of get yourself in front of enough people, or connected to enough people to find the good ones.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
So I think that's really important to kind of keep in mind as well, for those of you who are on and are like, but I don't want to talk to a lot of people. Like, it really is like, it is a numbers game, unfortunately. Like, you do kind of have to at least initially talk to more people, and then you'll have like the ones that it's going to be easy and it's going to be natural.
Excellent. And it's all about experimentation, Nicole. Going back to that, like, again, not everyone's going. You're not going to get on with everyone. Not everyone's going to have your ideal client. Not going to be your ideal client, or they may not have your ideal. If you're looking at a partnership, they may not have your ideal audience. But it's actually that it's that trial and error. So I think for everything, it's all about, if you're trying any kind of visibility strategy, it's all about testing it, trying it out consistently. Let's go back to that whole 90 days. I love Todd Herman and the 90-day plan. And so it's all about testing it, but being consistent for that 90 days, testing and measuring, and then being open, getting that feedback. So going back to the top where we were talking about actually getting visible, but then actively listening. Another huge strength for introverts, right? We are really great listeners. So as soon as you kind of putting yourself out there and getting visible, being open to the feedback that's coming back, so that you can actually tweak, pivot, fine-tune your message, whatever that is, but it's so important to track and measure that strategy to make sure that it's intentional and aligned with your business goals at the end of the day.
Right. So how do you manage your energy while still consistently being visible? Because you're talking about, and I think that is so important. I think, you and I were talking about that earlier. You see so many like memes and jokes about introverts and how they don't like to talk to people, how they don't want to be near anyone. And, that's not necessarily true. That's how we recharge, that's how we do things. I think it is, especially for us as business owners, I think that we absolutely, as business owners, do have a tendency to, struggle with confidence. We're already out of our comfort zone. It's scary. There's so much stuff. And I do feel it's gotten kind of jumbled together with like confidence and being an introvert and all of that. But for those of us who are aware that it is our energy levels and that we do need to recharge, how do we still manage our energy while being visible consistently?
So I've got a few tips here, Nicole, and I think the biggest one is having a lot of white space around us, you know. So again, you talked about being consistent for a period of time and then never seeing you again, joke, you know. But I think it's really important to schedule downtime, and that's certainly true for me too. You know, I extend so much energy putting on this online summit, speaking to interviewing 30 people, being out there on social media and all this kind of stuff, that literally I take at least a couple of weeks off, or even it was probably a month this time that I was completely not visible after that event. And it was just that I needed some real downtime and some white space. And so I think that's the biggest takeaway for me, that if I was to share that, is that it's all well and good being consistent and being visible, but cushion it with white, you know, that kind of white space and downtime as much as possible. Like, I'm a huge advocate for naps, you know, so on the weekends, all my friends know me to not call between 1 and 3 p.m. on a Saturday and Sunday, because I'm curled up with my book, just taking some downtime, you know. And I think that's really important with, you know, in life in general for introverts, you know, not necessarily for business too, but actually having that downtime and time to recharge is really important. The other thing that I would suggest is finding ways to automate some of your visibility. So again, you know, if we're in the online space, then having some kind of autoresponder sequences so that you are still touching people, you've got those touch points, but they are set and forget, and you don't have to think about them, I think. So I think automating a lot of stuff and pre-scheduling stuff. So again, I go through phases of this where I'm consistently good and then I'm consistently bad at it, but actually having pre-scheduling your social media content. So actually putting out, you know, creating 30 days of content and pre-scheduling it so it can kind of set and forget. Batching is another huge one. So again, when I had my podcast, actually saying, okay, I'm going to batch that content, and I'm going to do 4 interviews in a row, and that's going to be it. And I can then pre-schedule it, and it can go out, and I can set and forget it. So I think that kind of that automation, that pre-scheduling, that batching is really important. And then I think so many times we feel like that we've constantly got to come up with new content. And reality is, you know, such a small percentage of people actually see your content. So if we're talking about any kind of content, such a small percentage of people actually see it. Is how can you actually repurpose the content, you know? So looking at, okay, well, say I'm doing a Facebook Live, you know, like, okay, well, let's take that Facebook Live and how can I break that down? Well, I can download the video and add it to YouTube, and that's another place where I can get visible. Or I can repurpose it into a blog post, or I can take some tweetables out of that Facebook Live and create social media content around that, you know. So so thinking about how you can actually repurpose stuff so that you're not constantly coming up with new content, because I think that's also exhausting for us in general, you know. And then I think my last tip around this is going back to that wing woman accountability piece. And for me, certainly, I talk about having that one moment of courage to press the publish button, or press the go button, or whatever, go live button, you know. And I think having that person to kind of hold your hand as you jump off the deep end and do anything that's, you know, potentially scary for you is really important as well. So I think being able to have someone, so that helps with your energy, it helps you kind of push over the edge if you need to, if it's coming down to a confidence thing for you.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that's such a good point, because nowadays we can be visible without having to physically be there.
Right. Exactly.
You know, and Tamara said, I like the pre-scheduling idea. And for those of you who are on, I'd love to know, what have you guys tried to be more consistently visible, or where have you gotten stuck with it? If you can let us know in the comments, that would be super helpful. But I think that, you know, for sure, you know, that is the beautiful thing. Like, although I have to say I'm not the best at I was just saying that we had a content training with Haley Dale of Your Content Empire. And she was talking about all the ways to like reuse content. And I was like, I have to definitely get better at repurposing my content, because, you know, I'm constantly just creating new stuff or creating it on the fly. And I think that is bad for energy. Like, there's no reason for that, you know? So the fact that you're talking about scheduling and batching and pulling out different aspects of it, you know, I think that is really something that can help introverts stay present without energetically necessarily being there.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's huge, Nicole. And like again, when you talk about, I mean, what's the organic reach on Facebook these days? Like I don't even know what the percentage is about how many people actually see your content. So the reality is, so few people actually seeing that content. So if you can find any opportunity to repurpose it in any way, or just actually post the same content. I've got one of my coaches just literally goes through and she just repurposes, like literally has has a bank of content, and she'll just literally go through it and repost the same kind of content, because the chances are people aren't going to see that content anyway, and if they do, they've probably forgotten about it anyway, and so it's a good reminder for people too.
And honestly, like I would say too, for the few people that are listening, they don't actually care. They're happy to hear your stories again and again and again. Like there's a couple people that I follow and they tell me they definitely are saying the same things. Like I could basically tell their life story probably, and I'm fine with it. It doesn't stop me from like listening to them again or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, or tune out of that one email and come back to the next one. So I do think we put ridiculous standards for ourselves in terms of what showing up means, and we do not have great systems and processes to be consistent with it. And I know so many of you said that you really want, like your biggest struggle with visibility has been consistency. And it is probably because you have unrealistic expectations for what it means to be consistent.
Absolutely. And Nicole, a couple of things there. I think that what you talked about is actually what it means to show up, So I think actually taking the pressure off, what does that mean to you, and literally just show up, like literally just show up. And I know this is really hard, and it's certainly something that I try and practice, and I'm certainly not great at it myself, but actually being able to just show up without attaching any kind of meaning to what that looks like is really, like, if that, you just show up as you are, and I think that takes a lot of pressure off. And going back to your point of actually repurposing that content, I think you'll find that, again, if you are like, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, people have seen this content, I don't want to be seen to be repeating myself. But I think to that point, again, is that people will take away different things from your content too. So there may be a different nugget that they take out of that content that they possibly didn't see the first time around too, So I think that's another point, that you can kind of see the advantage of repurposing content that way, because people might find different things to actually take away from your sharing, and they may be in a different place in terms of where they are in their life, business, whatever, that they actually see something different in that piece of content as well.
Right. And it also goes along with what you recommended earlier, which is like, having the thing that you're known for. If you're constantly, we need to be consistent for our audience to know, like, and trust us. So if we're going all over the place talking about random things that don't have anything to do with not with us, with our audience's struggles, right? Our audience's needs, your guys' needs, your guys' struggles, right? That's what this is about. It's not really about me or what's going on in my day to day. It's really about where you guys are at, and that's where you guys need to stay as well, in terms of focusing on your clients, not thinking about, like, not letting our own stuff get in the way, and really saying, like, what do my clients need to hear? What do my potential clients need to hear? What does my audience need to hear? That kind of piece, I think that gets, the introverts who can really get in our heads about things. Like, I think it keeps us also not expending that mental energy overthinking things.
Absolutely. And to that point, Nicole, going back to visibility strategies are great, but if you're not really clear and you haven't done the legwork of defining your brand before you start any of your visibility strategies, it's meaningless, So like you say, it could be all over the place. So, going back to your real basics and getting really clear on what's your purpose, who do you serve, how do you serve them, and getting super clear on what your brand stands for, and then being able to then communicate that, I think is really important, because that, again, like you said, is going to help with your any kind of visibility strategy. And as I said, there's thousands of different ways that you can be visible, but when you're really clear on who you stand for and what you stand for, who you serve, and how you serve them, it becomes so much easier.
Right. So Taryn says that she's definitely struggled with focusing the content on one main message in any format. And that definitely is tricky. And I think too, you know, and this is actually a good point. So Taryn said, you know, just as an example, she's still learning about stories on Instagram, and she used to work really hard to figure out how to do it. And then she did one and it disappeared. And that's like so exhausting in the beginning when you're getting out there and you're like, I'm going to do it. And then suddenly like your work is gone. You know, I think we all have like blogs that disappear, or writing that we can't find, or videos that get deleted. You know, Taryn, and I think for sure, you know, I think that too, like really pick and choose your battles with your energy as an introvert, you know, and what can you get rid of off your plate? Because the truth is, like, we can automate visibility, we can hire copywriters, but, you know, at a certain extent, you know, you do, when you run a business, and I think most of the people here are solo providers, service providers, solopreneurs. Like, we are the faces of our business.
Right.
You know, we don't have necessarily agencies or brands, or even if we do have groups, like we still are trying to do our individual thing. We still have to show up for ourselves at times. We can't totally mask, you know, like put a mask. So I think the other thing that can be helpful, which we don't always realize is connected to this, is that, you know, if the visibility piece takes a lot of energy, what can you get rid of off your plate at the same time that so that you can focus on the visibility piece?
Right.
So what else like drains you? What else would sabotage that? You know, and just for me, for you guys, just, you know, and I was telling Casey this earlier, like for me, it's like the detailed stuff, like for with having guests, right? Like I love showing up for the interviews, you know, I love that piece of things. What I don't like, to be quite honest, and I'm sure you can understand this running summits, is, you know, making sure people submitted their questions, creating the images to share with you, like, you know, creating the Zoom links, sending them to you, creating the calendar invites, like all those little detailed things. Like, it's either that or showing up. Like, I have to choose one. I cannot do both. So, you know, bringing in an admin to do that was so helpful this round. Last year, you know, we just didn't have enough manpower on my team to do it. So I was only able to have 3 other guests. This year I was able to have 8 because I got rid of the other tasks that drain me.
That's such a huge piece, Nicole, is like really getting clear on where, coming back to leaning into your strengths. You know, I think for introverts, it's the more that you know yourself, the more that you know what drains you and what doesn't, is really, really important. You know, so as you rightly said, getting really clear. Again, I share, for any early stage business, they should be spending 80% of their time on marketing and sales, right? Like that is really absolutely critical. Like everything else can come second, you know, in terms of systems, processes, whatever else, that's all the other fundamentals inside of your business, but you need to be focusing on marketing in the early stages of your business, you know? So if you are needing to show up and be visible and market your business and get the leads, you know, in the early stages, and spend that 80%, what is the stuff that you can get rid of, like you rightly said? And actually, what is the stuff that really drains you? Because that is, like, if you are spending 80% of your time showing up and being visible, that's going to be exhausting, right? So you've got to schedule your downtime and your white space, like, around that.
Lives or individual outreach or whatever, you know, you do need to do the market and sales, and that really isn't outsourceable in the beginning, and honestly, sometimes even later.
Right, exactly.
If I could do it, I would. So, I mean, and I think that's a great example. So Brandon said his struggle's always been organization, and, you know, trying to be too perfect with it, or having unrealistic expectations. And I think, like, really, when you allow that, you know, that really does sabotage your visibility. It becomes a very good excuse not to be visible, you know. And I think especially for introverts, it's very easy for us to then say like, I'm so tired, you know, I'm so this, like, I don't have the energy for that. But it's not really about the visibility, it's about some of the other stuff.
Absolutely. And then and to that point too, Nicole, like, again, you don't have to be everywhere all the time.
Right.
Like, I think that's really, like, again, taking that pressure off yourself and saying, okay, I'm just going to pick one strategy, you know, I'm just going to pick one visibility strategy, and I'm going to do that for 90 days. Let's go back to that, you know, it's going back to that basics and saying, okay, let's just pick that one thing. We don't, and how long does it take to create a habit too, right? It's like, I
Right.
don't know. So, the more you do it,
but I'm
yeah,
thinking
I was like, I don't believe that.
I like the 90-day plan.
Yeah, so it is. It's definitely just picking that one thing. If you're really struggling with that organization and that piece of it, that organization piece, when you kind of, again, bring it back to keeping it simple. Like I always say, it doesn't need to be complicated. Keep it really simple.
It's funny because one of my clients just asked that in one of my groups. She was like, I want to do it all, but I don't know what to do. Should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do this? And, it sucks, but it really is like, do one thing for that consistent piece, get it working, and then you can add in more.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened. I was talking about one of my clients is she's a techie VA, a virtual assistant, and she was like, oh my gosh, I need to be more visible. And so we had a planning session, and she was like, I've been thinking about it, and I don't know how to show up visibly, and I don't know what to say, and all this stuff, and I was like, literally, okay, this is go onto LinkedIn, find 10 people that you want to connect with on LinkedIn and reach out and connect with them. This is you are really clear on who your ideal client is. Find them on LinkedIn, connect with them, organize a virtual coffee. And she was like, it can be that simple. And I said, yes, it can be that simple, right? You don't have to make it complicated.
I do think like the story we tell ourselves, like so many of my clients do, I'm like, you got to get out, you got to talk to people. And, it becomes such a big thing. And then when they do it, they're like, oh, this is fun. And I'm like, I know. And it's
fun, right?
It's okay for it to be fun. And then I think we're like mad at ourselves because we like made it into such a big thing that it wasn't. So it's like, it becomes an even more self-sabotage. Actually, Heather just brought up learning how you respond to expectation is eye-opening. And that's actually what we were talking about earlier. She mentioned the Gretchen Rubin's 4 Tendencies. Have you read that book or heard of it?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you should definitely check it out. It's kind of what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about, how Heather, maybe you could probably put a better description than me, but I know that it's about like, how do you respond to things, like to doing things? Are you the obliger? Like you do it no matter what for other people? Are you the rebel? Like, you're not going to do something unless you're rebelling against something. Are you like the overnight adapter? Like where, once again, if you like say you're going to give up gluten, you never touch it again the next day, so I think really understanding that too, and understanding how you respond to things, once again, is so important. And, I think a lot of times like being willing to try it differently and see how that is, because I think, I think a lot of times too, when you're in business, and you're developing that, boss personality, that boss style, we bring a lot of our other stuff from family, from friends, and like just old expectations from jobs, and we don't allow ourselves to see ourselves in a different light.
So true. And I talk about that, you go into business, and I think, and I talk about it all the time, is that it's your biggest self-development journey of all time is going into business for yourself, right? And so actually, knowing yourself and really knowing, so how you respond to things and how you show up, again, is that mindset piece is so critical, Nicole, and actually spending time on that mindset piece is absolutely essential in business too. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys have any other last questions, drop them in before we wrap up. I feel like we covered so much. And for those of you who are watching the replay, feel free to drop any questions or comments, or let us know like what your thoughts are, what you feel you'll try. I'd love for those of you who are on to let us know, what do you feel like you'd like to really commit to? What have you been avoiding that you've been saying it's because you're an introvert? And what do you feel like you'd like to try experimenting with for the next 90 days? Is it, Taryn, is it for you? Is it going to be like really figuring out Instagram stories? And I think too, this is also like the good news about knowing your audience is it's like, where are they going to be? If they are not on those things, let it go, right? Like you don't have to do it unless it's something fun for you or a hobby for you, but like don't relate it to work unless it's where your audience is, right? Brandon, for you, I know you're planning to like really create a freebie, and I know you have actually been putting yourself out individually, getting beta clients and stuff like that. So that's something that you can really commit to. And I think, Terry, for you, maybe you do want to try Facebook. It sounds like and sometimes we're like, oh, I can't do this because of this. And if we keep saying it about the one platform, I think it's okay to say, you know what, I do want to try it, even though it makes me uncomfortable, and give ourselves permission to try it, even though it's like, I don't like this aspect of it. Like, really, like, go all in and let yourself try it out and see, like, and then you could write it off rather than being in that in between where you're like, should I do this? I can't do this. You know, I know for me, like, that's always something that, you know, is always like tricky for me is like, you know, sometimes I really do want to try things and I say like, I can't try them, or I create a story around it or whatever. So, you know, maybe Terry, for you, it is allowing yourself to kind of do some Facebook Lives, but do them teaching style. Don't worry about the story piece yet. So Heather says, here's the 4 tendencies. Upholders respond to both inner and outer expectations. They love structure and order. So if that's your style, you'd really want to go in and create that strategy and that structure of when you're going to show up and how you're going to get out of that introvert shell. Obligers respond to outer expectations. People pleasers, so that for you would be really like finding people who are doing the things that you want to do and doing it for them. So if you want to go to an event or something, find a friend that wants to do it, and, you know, make sure that you get them, you do it for them rather than for yourself. So I'm a bit of a obliger myself. So I can like do things for other people, or maybe like think about where would your ideal clients want you to show up if you're a pleaser, and where could you show up for them better? Questioners respond to inner expectations. They always have to understand why they're doing something to do it. And rebels respond respond all expectations, or maybe like don't respond to all expectations. You have to clarify that one. But this is like good to think about, because I feel like it does normalize your feelings about things than constantly feeling like you're being difficult about things. So this is good. Taryn said stories probably don't matter. For 90 days, I'll hone my message talking points and try it over the phone, in person, and on my website. Yes. I love that, Taryn. That's going to take so much pressure off of you.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Casey, thank you so much for being here. And I know you have actually an introvert's guide to online visibility. So you all can get that. Click the link. So Heather said, autocorrect. Rebels resist all expectations. Okay. That's what I thought. So you guys can grab Casey's Introvert's Guide to Online Visibility. So, you know, and really use this guide, and it's going to help you uncover the system that works for you so that you're not overwhelmed, so that you can be influential, so you don't feel like everyone else is getting ahead of you. And you guys could click the link in the description to grab that, but it's at quietcollective.com.au/visibility. So make sure you guys grab that as well to go a little bit deeper into understanding this. And I think that, you know, I'm excited to see where you guys go, because now you've also learned about different strategies. So you can really go back, choose one of the strategies, whether it's the content strategy like Taryn's going to use, or whether it's the Facebook, I did one on Instagram stories, or whether it's the guest podcast or the blogging. You know, all you have to do is choose one of them. And really use the strategy to go all in on it.
Absolutely. I agree. So yeah, Nicole, just, you know, pick one, take the pressure off yourself and just pick one. So thank you so much for having me. It's been such fun.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody that's on, and definitely, you know, let us know which one you're going to go all in on, so that way you can really, you know, master it and not overwhelm yourself. Just like I'm going all in on this one for the 30 days, and then you guys won't see me. Well, you will see me if you live in my basement and you come visit me down at the pool. But thank you again, Casey, for being here, guys. I'll be back in the group later, but feel free, for those of you watching the replay, to let us know if you have any questions or anything. I'll be checking in on it. Good night.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Oh, hold on. I don't know if Oh, okay. I was like,